Welcome to another episode of the Shakedown. With me as always, my compadre, my brethren, my right honourable colleague and peer, the one that they call the A-side, aka Shazinho. How are you doing, good sir? Hello and welcome to another episode of the Shakedown.
Right, yeah,
with me as always, my compadre, my brethren, my right honourable colleague and peer, the one that they call the A-side. It doesn't matter how you are doing,
What?
Shazinho. It doesn't matter.
Why would you do that to me?
It doesn't.
Why?
It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter, Shez. It doesn't matter because, of course, as always, there are very many F1 centric thread at which we need to must pull. Shazina, let me ask you the question this way, chap: is Maximilian Verstappen going to win this championship, or better put, sir? This is the important topic. Are McLaren sufficiently robust and or resilient to hold off a fire-breathing dragon in one Maximilian Verstappen?
I'd counter that and say, is anyone resilient enough to counter-punch a fire-breathing, charging, Red Bull trodding Max Verstappen? I'd say no. I'd say that actually, contrary to what everyone says about McLaren throwing away a championship, this is much more about Max doing what Max does, taking what he thinks is rightfully his and just doing it perfectly. I hope he does it. Genuinely, Cameron. I really hope he does it, because I think the way that McLaren have behaved between their drivers for way too long now has been disrespectful to the Drivers' Championship.
Mate, it feels a bit weird. So Charles Edward in the first instance, humbled as always, so far too kind. Let me say this about McLaren: it feels like they've messed around. I said a couple of weeks ago that when you interject so frequently and with such impunity as far as the competitive landscape and put your thumb on the competitive scales, then the racing gods at some point are going to turn their back on you, right? And it feels like it's that moment. Like everything feels like at McLaren it's falling apart at the seams. The drivers don't look like they get along too well. Oscar Piastri's otherwise sterling form has gone by the wayside the last 10 races. What is it? 2 wins, 1 win, 2 pole. Like he's done nothing, chap. Usually his
last
mental.
Time that was Sandford, wasn't it?
Mate, what is going on? Lost 64 points in the last 4-5 races. Like what is happening at McLaren? I feel like, so go on then, Shez. Are you, to save a dying puppy, you going for Max Verstappen for 4 soon to be 5 times?
Not to save a dying puppy, but I think the odds are better than 50-50 now. Like he said, what, last race it was 50-50. I'm either going to win it or I'm not, right? But I think the scales are starting to tip a bit further in his favour, and I still think McLaren have it in their hands to be able to claw this back. But if they keep performing like they did at the US Grand Prix, and Max keeps performing the way he has been performing in the last 4 races, then it's going to slip further and further away from them. And Max will absolutely, fully deserve this championship. And I think it will be the best thing I've ever seen.
You're not the first person to have said that over the past couple of weeks, Shez. I think Max has been the driver of the season. I think Max has been the driver of the past 3-4 years, and I think he's done. The problem for Max was always going to be the naysayers will always say that he's a fast car merchant. That when Adrian knew he's there, he's brilliant. When Adrian knew he's not there, he's not so good. We talked about it before, didn't we, Shez? That we're yet to see him come from behind in the championship. There were these bits and bobs that a dominant car, sadly for Max, disallowed him from showing the full repertoire, from showing the full palette, what he's dealing with, like his diverse portfolio as far as his very unique brand of automotive pugilism. Now, however, there is nothing that the naysayers can say. Adrian knew he's not there. He hasn't had a dominant car. He's had to chase. He's coming from behind. He's still 40 points. He's racing an MCL 3.9 in the hands of Lando and Oscar, neither one of whom are poor peddlers. And it's like, it's all of a sudden, I think this is why you're hearing, Shez, for the longest time we've been, but I mean, you were the first person to let me know properly that in 2021 you said once upon a time, if Max Verstappen had retired at the end of that season, just by dint of how bright his flame burnt that year, that you would still, if he retired at the end of 2021 Abu Dhabi, that you would still have to put him on the Mount Rushmore of F1 then. Sack off 22, 23, 24. Let's pretend that they didn't exist. You would still have to put... I thought you were crazy, Shez, but this season we're seeing that you were not, good sir.
Okay, let's just walk this back just a tiny little bit, right? The car merchant thing I've always thought is nonsense, and it's nonsense when it's applied to absolutely anybody. But this is much more about what a driver can do with the tools that they've been given. And Max does things with the tools that he's been given that I think other people just cannot do. Like in the middle of the season, Max was still putting in performances, but he can't drag a Haas to the front of the grid. That's just not
But
possible.
Dr. Helmut Marko said that he could, right? But were we guilty for taking him at face value when it was the
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
sentiment?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Of course we were. And people were literally taking that literally, right? And that's just not how Formula One works. There is a ceiling above which any car cannot go by dint of physics. But if you start to develop a car that has the performance, a driver like Max will amplify that, will amplify what you think is possible. It will raise the ceiling, the bar of what can be done with that machinery, and you start to see them exponentially get faster and faster and faster, and just get more and more focused, more and more consistent, do more and more things that you think just couldn't be done. Um, and that is what we've found in the last sort of 4 or 5 races, that whatever Red Bull managed to bring with that floor update in Monza and all of the front wing updates that they've brought since then, and the balance that they've been able to bring, and the way that they've been able to lower the rear of the car, especially if you ask Andrea Stella, that's what he reckons they've been able to lower the rear of the car, and not wear out the plank. That's a secret apparently, but only according to Andrea Stella. But if you bring all of that together and then you put Max Verstappen in the mix, you will get magic,
Mate.
because that's what Max Verstappen brings, and he has done ever ever since he stepped into a Formula One car. But this has coincided with a bit of a problem for McLaren, right? In that, number one, they don't have a clear focus within their team from a driving point of view, right? Their two drivers are so equal. Yes, one might have the momentum at one point in the season, and the other one might be on a downturn, but they're both fairly equal in terms of their attributes overall anyway. That they've not been able to they've not been able to put their weight behind one or the other of them. And in fact, they've gone the other way and tried to control the uncontrollables. That for me is arrogance. It is arrogance. And another reason why I really want Max to win is because what's happening right now to McLaren is partly a product of that arrogance, thinking that they could control everything because they're so dominant, right? And to the point that they said, look, we're going to stop development on this car. I think I read somewhere that they haven't brought a proper update since April. I mean, that's ridiculous,
Insanity, chap.
right? And you can argue about why that's happened. They've had less wind tunnel time, less CFD time than everybody else. Red Bull being fourth in the championship currently and have been since what, July, means that they have consummately more wind tunnel and CFD time, so they can whack more stuff on the car. But it's Red Bull doing what Red Bull always do, focusing on the here and now, whereas McLaren, through driver arrogance, controlling arrogance, update arrogance, are now ultimately reaping what they have sowed. And I don't feel a huge amount of sympathy for them. Do you?
mate. Not even a millimetre's worth of sympathy, mate. You reap in F1 what you sow, Zach Brown. How very dare you? I'm so upset with Zach Brown and McLaren at so many different junctures. The way that they're dealing with Oscar Piastri, I think the favouritism thing, it's just ridiculous, chap. Oscar Piastri needs your help, Zach Brown. When it was Lando earlier in the year, it was like, well, give him the suspension geometry. Do you know what I mean? He needs more feedback through the steering wheel. Let's bend over backwards and bend the knee and give him that. It's Lando Norris, the prodigal son. It's Lando Norris's ear after it was Michael's before and Ayrton Senna. How very dare you, Zach Brown, utter the name Lando Norris in the same sentence as Ayrton Senna or Michael Schumacher? How very dare you, sir? Lando Norris telling Lewis Hamilton it's very easy to win when the car's the best car on the grid. You've only got to beat your teammate. Well, how about now, Lando Norris? It's too much, chap. I'm done with all. You're
using his proper name though now. That's interesting.
Apart from Lando Norris. No, but, you know why, Shez? You want me to tell you? Let me read out Matthew Brown, legend as always, mate. If Max manages to complete the biggest comeback in F1 and equal Matt Michael's record of 5 consecutive championships since 2004, there is no argument or any protest anymore. Max will be the greatest ever. I mean,
good shout. It's it's difficult, isn't it? I never thought I would say this, but there is an argument. I mean, him being in the top 3 of all time now, even if he doesn't pull this off, even if he gets close to it, I think is almost inarguable.
I'd love to make that argument, Shez. You know me, yeah. I'm partial for a cheeky devil's advocate from time to time, but I just don't have the evidence. I can't put Max outside of the top 3 in history in F1 ever. All heads must bow, all tongues must confess. He might well be the greatest that I've ever seen, at the very least. But
can we at least in this part give some credit to what Red Bull have done?
How can you not, chap?
Insane. Right, exactly. They have not understood this car since the middle of 2023, right? And they've just been 2023 was basically them going, right, Max is doing what he needs to do. We don't quite understand how he's doing it, but we'll just carry on. And they've taken the time to go back to basics, listen to their driver, listen to what he has been wanting to do, and this car, the way they approach weekends. I've heard a lot of people saying, they were already doing this, all of this stuff. Even Laura Mekias has said it, that all of the stuff that's coming through right now was already a product of what Christian Horner had implemented. But I would argue that actually the way that a weekend now runs is very different to the way that it was running when Christian Horner was around, in that, it's no longer that they have an absolutely shoddy Friday and then they're working frantically in the simulator, and then suddenly they come up with something that's really good in qualifying on the Saturday and then burns out its tires on the Sunday. Now it seems like a much more gradual, logical build up to Grand Prix weekend, and I think that there has been a change in how they approach a weekend, and it's been positive.
Yeah, I think so too, mate. But you know what the joke is? I tried to chalk it up to legacy Horner impact. But then I was reading an article today that said that Horner was desperate to give up on RB21 and focused on 2026, which is chaos. That's insane. I think Lauren Mekies has done some things. No longer, like you said, Shez, are they doing random walk design philosophy and upgrades. It feels more deliberate. They get into a race and they're going hard, as Max likes to do, from second one of session 1. Like that's... They're doing bits, the bloody upgrades of work, the wing beam, the floor fairings, the bloody perpendicular front wing, the rear wing. They've gone in 10 toes down. And it reminds me, ironically, of Red Bull in prime Christian Horner time, right? They won't hesitate to play a joker. They're ripping off the Lando Norris tape that he's using to get into the grid. Rip it off. Fudge that. I don't care what Crofty's saying. Oh, it's so naughty. Behave themselves. They need to... What? Behave what? Do you want to win or do you want to lose? Are you prepared to pay the tax requisite to obtaining forcing to be 5-time champ? I just honestly, mate, and I think Tom Clarkson said it best than the F1 Nation when he was talking about the difference. He was saying, I think I'm going to bastardize his phrase now, but he was alluding to the fact that pressure changes teams fundamentally. Do you know what I mean? Denatures an enzyme per se, Shez. And he said that around McLaren that the pressure, that they look different, that they make mistakes, and that this is where you realise that recognise real, right? That Red Bull only exist to be a winning Formula One team. I think the term that he uses, that they are street fighters, and McLaren, as at the time of writing, are not.
But centered around a person, right? Laura Mekies said in a podcast episode, literally, I've just finished listening to it. He said that, look, Max is central to all of it, right? He is embedded within the team, and there isn't necessarily a seam between where Max finishes and the car starts. That it's just one entity together. That's how they're able to do the things they do. Is how he's able to do the things that he does. And McLaren just don't really have that. And the pressure thing, the pressure at McLaren, it ebbs and flows with who's holding the ball at the time. At the beginning of the season, Lando seemed to have all of the pressure. He came out of Australia leading the points, and within one race, he's managed to. Oh, I've made like 3 mistakes in my qualifying lap in China, and I've qualified sixth. You know, this is the kind of thing that Lando was doing, and he carried that on. And for some reason now, Oscar, unflappable Oscar, who I think has lost a bit of faith, and I think part of his performance is down to this, that it's the pressure of the championship, it's the pressure of having his lead cut by 64 points by a 4-time world champ in a car that's at least equal to the car that he's driving right now, plus the feeling that the team don't really want him to win this, and they haven't done for like the whole time.
Oh, the
and
humanity,
and it's
Shez.
not it's
Oh,
not
the
it's not
humanity.
but you know what I mean, all of that weighing down on you is going to make you feel like, can I do this? This is my first go at this, and like everything seems to be against me, and that seems to manifest itself in like going slower, being really withdrawn, driving within himself, really not wanting to make mistakes. Especially after he's had the in the wall episode in Baku. Like, all of that must weigh down on Oscar, and it's the complete opposite, I think, as you say, of what McLaren should be doing, which is lifting him up. This is he's been their best chance for a championship all season, and they're wasting it.
Sad times.
And now I think it's too late. Genuinely, I think it's too late to kind of go, all right, we're going to throw all our weight behind you, Lando, fall in line. It's too late for that.
We need to double click on that. OG Zilla, you're a legend. Some concerns I have as far as Red Bull are concerned, which seemingly are being overshadowed by the fairy tale level of comeback by Max, is how much of the 2026 research and development are Red Bull sacrificing to keep bringing these upgrades to the end of the year. Absolutely, OG Zilla. But I tell you what, when Shez said it before, there was a point there, a killer one that I wanted to make. I feel like I've read this book before, OG Zilla. Can you say 2021? Do you remember when Mercedes divested out of their design philosophy in the dying embers of that season and thought that they had enough in hand to invest wholeheartedly in 2022? What happened there? Sometimes in F1, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. You might be right, OG Zill. Of course, there will be a downside impact as far as 2026 car is concerned. But listen, if you've got the opportunity at a championship, you have to seize that. Therefore, Shez, let me double click on something that you said there. You said that you don't think you keep referring to Oscar Piastri's chances of winning a championship in the past tense. You said he has been McLaren's best chance. Are you insinuating,
think he is right now?
Mate? I want to ask you the question, Shez, before I chime in. Do you think he's right now McLaren's best chance of winning a championship?
On current form, if he keeps driving the way he is driving right now, you cannot be 0.3 a lap off your teammate and still be the one that's leading the charge. Like they're both in the hunt, right? Lando's only 14 points behind him now, is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right? Like I need Oscar to win a race, basically. He needs to win a race to throw some of that pressure off of himself.
But
And right now, with the way the last four races have gone, be it in qualifying or in the race itself, I don't see where that win comes from.
wow, and to see that, good son, and I will raise you this. Each of the next five races, so you know Mexico this race weekend,
It's gonna
then
be
it goes
nice.
Brazil, then it's Las Vegas, and then shortly thereafter it's Qatar, and then Abu Dhabi is your season finale. Have you seen Oscar Piastri's records around these tracks? Not good.
Well, Qatar's
Shez,
not too bad. Didn't he win the sprint
okay,
in,
we'll
in
go through it,
23?
mate. I mean, I've got the stats at hand. So Mexico, I'll do 2023 Mexico 8th, 24 Mexico 8th, Brazil 14th in 2023 from Oscar, in 2024 8th, Las Vegas he was 10th in 23, 7th in 24, second in Qatar quite rightfully, and third in 2023 and 24 respectively. Abu Dhabi 6th in 23 and 10th in 24. I think you said the point about McLaren want to circle the wagons and get behind Oscar Piastri, it being only his third season, him having lost form properly, by the way. The first 9 races in the year, he netted himself 4 poles and 5 race wins. In the last 9, Oscar has 1 pole and 2 race wins. So can you say give that dude support, especially going into 5 races that he's never done well at? What was Oscar's Achilles heel last year, Shez? If you could get at him, if there was something that you can improve,
One lap pace.
1 lap pace, and there's something else, right? How about that? How about their tyre management?
Yeah, but tire management. So tire management last year was better, but it seemed to come at
Better.
the expense of one lap pace. Whereas this season, it's not been like that. And actually, if we were talking about Oscar Piastri at the beginning of the season, I would completely counter what you've just said about like, oh, he wasn't that great at this track or that track in the past. Because last year in China, he was nowhere, and yet turns out this year, pole in the win twice.
I think what we saw at the US Grand Prix had something to do. It wasn't just speed, Shez. It was tyre management. These tracks that are going to challenge the tyres in warmer conditions, a little bit humid. Lando Norris is always going to do one of these as versus Oscar Piastri. And I think if I'm going to attribute causation to Oscar Piastri's poor performance around a Mexico, Brazil, Las Vegas, Qatar and Abu Dhabi, I think it's got something to do with tyre management, chap. I'm convinced now.
Yeah, but
These tracks require a decent tyre whisperer like Lando when he's had his Weetabix, and that's why I think to your point, to loop the circle, Shez, if we're playing favourites, I know that Max is currently second favourite, OJP a marginal favourite, only marginal. Lando Norris is third. Take Max out the picture for a second. I think I think Lando should be a bigger. I think Lando should be second favourite behind Max.
But this is what wow. But this is one of those situations where if Oscar can get back to the qualifying form that he had earlier in the season, actually the tyre management starts to come back because there seems to be well, there is a linear relationship between track position and being able to keep your tyres alive. Like Max had zero issue with keeping his tyres alive, in the Grand Prix at least, in Kota this weekend, whereas Lando, I think, he was finding it much more difficult. It was lucky for him that he was on a tire offset to what Charles was doing. Charles was working the magic. Charles was the guy with the actual tire management to keep
True.
his softs alive
Chaos.
for the amount of time that he did. I don't think he's had enough plaudits for that, or certainly not from me. He's getting them now because that was an unbelievable performance. Like, how did he keep Lando behind him? But if you are in front, you can manage your tires how you want.
Yeah.
I think George Russell was right this weekend when he said that actually Formula One, not particularly brilliantly, is now just a race to be first into the first corner. Because if you can come out of the first corner ahead of your rival, well, clean air is king, isn't it? Oscar said that 2 years ago.
Imagine the irony. Oh my God.
But is that wrong? And that I
No,
think is
he's
where Oscar is
completely right. But that's
costing
how he's going to.
himself.
That's what I'm saying to you, Shez. The irony is that he said that, and this is exactly the alter at which he's going to lose the championship.
But it's because he's not on one lap pace qualifying high enough to make himself a factor. But he knows that. That's what he was trying to do in the sprint. He was like, I cannot be behind Lando in the sprint, otherwise I am going to lose. Even at a circuit like Circuit of the Americas, where you can overtake, the turbulent wake and the tyres in this Pirelli era are so delicate that unless you're ahead, you're not going to win. And it's led to issues like that.
Insane, Shez. Insane. Talk to me about that incident very quickly between Lando and Oscar during the sprint. Who done it, chap? If we're laying blame culpability at somebody's door to save a dying puppy again, give me one name, Shez, and why.
Okay, disclaimer, it was a racing incident. I still think that,
Boo.
overall it was a racing incident. But if you're going to put blame on someone, if you're doing the opposite of a no blame culture, it's Oscar's fault, right?
Why?
Why? Why, he asks me. Yeah. What's the first rule? What's the first rule of the papaya hue? Don't touch your teammate, right? And look, I get it. I get it. I've said it.
But
said
did
it.
Oscar go on?
But I've said this elsewhere as well, right? That what Oscar did, if he had done that on lap 25, turn 12, we would have all been going brilliant. That was actually really good racecraft. But to do that turn one, lap one, in that corner, you were always going to be inviting trouble. Like, he could have got away with it, and he might have actually come out ahead of Lando if everything had played out how he had designed it. But you can't expect that there will be no one steaming down the inside when you're turning in like that. And it was. Did you saw the steering input, right?
Go
Did you
on.
see it? Like, on
No,
board, it was 180 degrees.
was
He was
he?
completely upside down with the steering wheel, right? And sharp. He turned much sharper than anybody else in that pack. And ultimately, he could have got away with it. But there was almost certainly going to be somebody there. Just ask George Russell and Carlos Sainz from last year. It's exactly the same silly incident. And poor old Nico Hulkenberg, who'd qualified really well, got all of the blame, which I found pretty amusing, because it felt like Zach Brown was desperate to find somebody else to blame for the crash, so he wouldn't have to get into
And then he's
repercussions.
shaking hands afterwards.
Yeah, had to, didn't he?
I empathize. What concerns me from Oscar's perspective is that, only like 3 or 4 races ago, everybody was praising this chap because he was so forensic in his car placement. Well, what he did so brilliantly to Max at Miami is that he was playing a different, very peculiar brand of automotive pugilism. It was like checkmating 4 moves. He was biding his time. Do you know what I mean? Leveraging time to his advantage. Therefore, but this move was almost like he was an F1 virgin. It was like he was Gabby Bortoletto in the car for the first. In fact, I wouldn't even expect Gabby to do a move like that. The switchback, turn 1, lap 1, Cota. Hang on, chap. Switchback only works if you've got distance behind you, fella, because you need to get early on the brakes and early on the throttle shortly thereafter. So of course you're going to have Alonso and Hulkenberg behind you. It's always going to get techie and techie things. And that's what concerns me, Shez, because that manoeuvre is it's so unlike Oscar to make such a silly, overly ambitious manoeuvre, which makes me think that the one thing that's changing him, just like an enzyme or catalyst being denatured, is bloody this pressurised circumstance of the championship, eh?
I love it when you talk chemistry.
I don't know what I'm on about, Joe.
But no, I mean, I agree with you. I don't think it was a badly executed move. Like, he knew what he was doing. It's just the choice to do it was a problem. But as we've literally just said, he is still thinking 2 or 3 moves ahead. He knows that if he's not ahead of Lando, um, coming out of turn one, he is losing points to Lando because he's not getting past him in a car that is essentially the same car that he qualified 3 tenths behind his teammate. If he's not coming out of turn one ahead of his teammate, he that's where he finishes. And ultimately, like, let's be brutally honest about this. Yes, it was a bit silly, but it worked out quite nicely for him, didn't it? Like,
Well,
if you're gonna take somebody out,
yeah, but you can't. He didn't do that deliberately,
no,
chap.
of
That
course he
wasn't by
didn't. Of course he
design.
didn't.
He
Of
was quite
course he didn't.
lucky, chap,
But
but
yeah,
by
yeah, I agree. But that sometimes
incidentally.
fate sort of works for you in that way, doesn't it? I don't think he comes out of that after getting reprimanded by the big boss. I don't think he steps out of his car going, actually, that's probably not the worst thing that could have happened.
No, of course, chap. But again, if F1 is a momentum game,
Mm.
and then you flipping sacrifice all of the time on track, and then you're gonna fudge up the race because you run the car too conservatively as far as its ride heights. What have we got to do again, Shez? Even under that aegis, Oscar's always been a thinking shooter of an F1 peddler. You've got
Yeah, but the
so much more
but the
to lose.
focus shortens though when the prize is in front of you, right? And
Agreed.
but
Very
do you know
well
what I
said.
mean? Right,
Yes,
but that's what it is. And his focus there was just on the sprint, not on, right, what do I get out of this weekend?
mate. It is chaotic. It's chaotic. But I never want for drivers to crash into each other. But I'm not going to lie to you, Shez. I'm almost half glad that that's happened. That feels like that's the moment at which the Max Verstappen challenge and that the championship is like they've lit the blue touch paper, right? We have ourselves some F1 back all of a sudden, and I'm super pleased. But let's talk about Charles Leclerc as he round third, Shez, because it would be remiss of me not to talk about modern day Jean Alesi, because he wasn't bad. Your driver, I mean, if there was a race at which you can't call him modern day Jean Alesi in 2025, then the USGP were that.
Wasn't it fun?
It was all right, chap. It was all right. I'm humbled. Do you know what I mean? I never hate it when a driver makes a mug of me and by dint of action on track forces me to shut my mouth. Sometimes, I mean,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
wasn't too bad. Your fella, he was all right. It was all.
My
What?
my
How did you
my
rate the
my
drive?
fella.
Go on, go on. Let's
Yeah,
wax
I
lyrical
know.
about Shaw for a
No,
second.
I rated it very, very highly. It was pretty classic Charles Leclerc these days. And before I go into like how good that performance was, it was also good timing, I thought, because there's a little bit of a sense that the other driver who I think has been sort of one of the best three on the grid this season, George Russell, has kind of been stealing the limelight over the past couple of races. That win in Singapore, and then
Mate.
all the chat about his contract. It was all very George centric, and I was on board that as well. I'm really keen to see what George can do in a fast car in a championship position. But Charles reminded us, I think, why we rate him so highly. He qualified really well in Grand Prix qualifying, third, I think it was, and good start, got ahead of Lando, needed to do that with the strategy that he was on, and then somehow managed to get those soft tires on a heavy fuel load with an unrubbered track. He managed to hold off Lando for the entirety, pretty much, of that first stint, and then undercut himself ahead of Lando for the second stint and kept him behind again to the point that Lando was like, I can't do anything, and had to be egged on, which is very classic Lando, if you're going to ask me, to have another go. I thought it was great. But what was really fun was number one, sprint. Okay, he didn't come out ahead of Lewis, but his aggression when he was defending against his teammate. Second, the way he fought against Lewis again in Grand Prix proper when he was about to jump into the pit lane. We can argue about how sensible that was from a Ferrari point of view. They probably should have just moved him aside, but hey ho, it is still Ferrari. But also then when he actually fought Lando, who was ostensibly the quicker car, had the pace where it counted. His car positioning
He's
in
clever.
right in
He's
sector
not
in
bad.
sector two, wasn't it nice to watch? Like it was
He's
always in
not bad.
just the right, but it was so polite as well. It was like Lando was knocking on the door, and Charles was very politely just shutting it in his face
He's
every corner. It was really, really good to watch.
he's yeah, he's Steven Seagal. He's Charles Leclerc.
What do you mean? He's got a ponytail and he's a bad actor.
Also no, he no, he kind of he redirects
Like
the
water.
overtakers. Yeah, be like water, my friend. Be like water. But he does a brilliant job of redirecting. As a defender of a position,
Yeah, yeah.
redirecting the attacker's energy. Like I mean, he kind of just he gives Lando a sniff and then just ushers him out nicely, and then that's another corner defended. Right, it's very subtle, almost.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's an automotive sleight of hand. He does that very well. Listen, on any given Sunday, Charles Leclerc is as near as makes no difference, unbeatable. But the problem is, Shez has always been for him. Even in the course of the weekend, he was making mistakes, wasn't he? Not a big one there, like
Was
just
he?
mate, free practice. Come on, Shez. Stop being another like. I mean, let's not availability
Well,
heuristic,
well,
eh?
then, I mean, if you're gonna talk about a proper like a proper mistake, didn't he spin it?
That's the one that I'm talking
But
about.
was that in free practice? I thought it was in sprint quali.
Uh, Perhaps I can't remember,
I think
mate.
it was in sprint quali.
Mate,
Like
you
it
know.
wasn't enough to put him out of Q1,
No,
but
no, no, no. He still it didn't affect him. It was in
yeah.
a Paul Ricard
But
one.
But Lewis did the same thing, didn't he? Didn't he lock up into turn one on his quickest lap? Silly boy.
Mate, I can't even do the Lewis Hamilton talk at the moment. But he's getting closer, to be
He is
fair
getting
to him.
closer. He is
He's
getting
getting
closer.
closer, but then all the while further away in points. 50 points is now the delta between
Yeah.
the two of them in the championship. But it feels like, I mean, you pointed it out to me, Shez, in terms of time, he's not, it's no longer 3/10 in quali, which is good news at least.
Yeah,
I want to ask you a final
10 seconds.
question, Shez, but I need to
Ooh.
read out Safak super quickly. I don't think Oscar feels only the pressure from Max, more the pressure from McLaren. He knows he's not the favourite from Monza onwards.
This
It's techie, Safak. You make a good
nailhead
point.
hit.
Joe says Max Verstappen 5 times. Umant says Oscar is not at the right place up there. It doesn't feel like he's a bit. And so John says McLaren, remember, had no sprint data. And that's the sacrifice that they made. Kaori, you're an absolute legend. Go, Shez. I know Shez is, by the way, Shez of Chide GP fame. If you like yourself a cheeky F1 podcast, then get over to that YouTube channel. One of the goatiest to ever goated. In closing, Chezinho's around third base. You talked about George and then tangented very subtly onto Charles Leclerc.
Other
You've
way
got
around. But yeah.
you've got. I mean, minor. Don't grice his razor me, Shez. What are we talking about here? Pick one of those drivers. You're Christian
I
Horner and you're
can't. I
building a
can't.
team. Well, you're
Cameron,
gonna
I
have to.
can't. I
You're gonna
can't.
have.
Genuinely, I
You're
can't.
gonna have to. Shez, I'm pushing you here. You are Christian Horner in 2026. You have a lamp and a genie in it. You can sign Max Verstappen. He's your first driver, and then the second
Oh,
car you can sign one of George. If that sat that off, you can sign one driver, either George or Charles. I'm not giving you any
as in
outs.
to partner Max.
No negative to lead. You've got Kimi
Why
Antonelli
can't
in
I
the
have
other car.
both? I've got a genie. Why can't I have
No,
both?
no, forget it, because you've only got one wish. You've got you've got Kimi Antonelli in one car. You can sign either Charles Leclerc or George. Which one are you signing, chap? Let me smell this cognitive dissonance on you. Go on, fella.
It'll be Leclerc, but only because
Because you love
of the
him.
cognitive dissonance.
Because
I
you
do love
love
him.
him. You
I
love him.
do.
But you
I
know that's
do.
the wrong answer, Shez. You know that's the wrong
No, but
answer.
I genuinely do not know it's the wrong answer. That's why if it was a clear George Russell, I'd say George Russell. And you know me, like if it's a clear one thing or the other, there's data behind it, there's evidence to go for it. That's what I'll go for. But the difference between Charles and George, and they approach it from very different places, the difference between them is as thin as fag paper. People still use that reference, right? But there's hardly anything between them. It's so difficult to choose. Like if you're talking to me about who is in the podium positions in terms of performances on the current grid at this moment in time, it's Max who is ahead of those two by a margin. And then those two, and I cannot separate them in terms of ability. But if you're going to ask me if I had a genie and I had to pick one of them, I'd pick Charles because he's Gilles Villeneuve, and that's the best driver that's ever plonked his butt in a car.
I can't suffer this level of cognitive dissonance. As I can't. No, I won't. I think here's my exam answer as we round third. Over the course of one race, if both drivers have had their Weetabix, you go Charles Leclerc every single day of the week, right? It would be disingenuous for me to say anything other than that. But if I'm a team principal, shares, and I want to win championships, if we have this conversation under that aegis, then there is one name that has to come out my mouth, and his name is King George Russell of
He
Kingsley
won't
and
listen
Norfolk.
to you. He'll just sit in the car and not listen to you.
I don't care.
He'll just be, I'm doing my own,
Doesn't
thing,
matter.
guys.
He's a killer. He's a killer. Did you see the overtaking manoeuvre that he tried on Max Verstappen? That it didn't come off. It doesn't subvert the fact that it was a genius, mate. It was genius. It was that.
It was a great move.
It was
except he didn't pull it off.
It
was awesome.
It was Saudi Arabia 2021. Do you know what I mean? There's a romantic in me that celebrates Sector 1 and Sector 2 almost because, not despite the bloody Sector 3 incident that Max had. And I think George is showing us.
Cameron CC listeners, just remember that I was accused of cognitive dissonance. Yeah.
George is in. So go on then, Shez. No, let me pin you down as we round fourth now.
Yeah, go on.
Over the championship, you're saying you really, with a straight face, you're going to
Okay,
take Charles
okay.
over
So
George for the championship.
So Cameron, you're the one that is always like, let's go back to the mistake that Charles Leclerc made in 2021 and forget the fact that he hasn't made a mistake in 3 seasons, right? You have to look at this over a big enough sample set, right? I think that George has been the better driver this season, right? Of if you had to if you put me in the spot, gun to head, George versus Charles this season, it's been George. But then Charles pulls out a performance like he did at Kota, and you're like, wait a second. If he has a car to perform, and we've just talked about what a driver needs, they're not Fred Flintstone. They're not like pedaling the car literally on their own. When you give him a car, he produces performances like that. And I would have said that in 2024, actually, Charles was the better driver. But it was consummate again with the fact that he just had a better car last year. George marginally seems to have a better car this year, as evidenced by the constructors' championship right now. So it ebbs and flows between these two drivers. So if you'd asked me this question at the end of 2024, I would have said no doubt Charles Leclerc. You asked me at the end of 2025, I say no doubt George Russell. But how do you put those two things together? It's because those two drivers are so close in performance. I don't think you can separate it out other than being subjective. And that's what you're doing. That's what I'm doing. And that's fine. But we just have to admit that that's what it is.
Shez, I vehemently disagree, sir. I've never disagreed with anything more in my life. We never, ever, not now, not ever, will sacrifice truth nor objectivity at the altar of any cognitive dissonance worthy of the moniker. Not on this. And I see where you're going, and there is a purple sector car tax to be paid and normalised for when you're having this conversation. But I just think. I think George would beat Charles, not because he's a better driver, nor is he faster, but he's more committed to the cause. He will rest like Michael back in the day. There will be no stone left unturned as George.
I think Charles does the same. But I think that Lewis in his heyday was like that as well. He relies so much on his own ability that he has built up over his youth and his career. That's what he did, wasn't it? It was he drove on the seat of his pants, and you loved that. We all did. And
Yeah,
you're
no,
telling me
no.
that now this guy turns up, drives on the seat of his pants, like with a joy and a verve that is reminiscent of the greatest driver that's ever driven, and you're gonna plump for the other guy, please,
I mean,
please.
errors of the unforced variety shows. Do you know?
How many? When?
Enough,
When? Give me the last one.
enough to be that. Well, we just talked about it at the
Oh,
US Grand Prix.
but did Charles lock up
No,
trying to go past?
that it wasn't an unforced error of consequence
So
doesn't mean it
George's
wasn't an
so
unforced error.
George's error didn't have consequences.
What George's the attempted overtake on Max?
Yeah.
No, but it's a
If
risk to reward count. Don't do this, Shez. It's a risk to reward count. No, no,
everything's
no,
an
no,
error,
no,
man.
no, 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 no. It was
If
an
he
error.
hadn't locked up,
I thought you were
if he
talking
hadn't
about.
locked up, he goes past.
I thought you were true. I thought you were talking about Charles's mistake. It was an error, but it was a calculated error, like an Oscar
What,
Piastri in his.
George's?
But yes, chap, like an Oscar Piastri in his pump. It was not win it or bin it type. That wasn't the risk reward count that George has done. He realised that if he had an opportunity to win this race, then he had to buy a lottery ticket to overtake Max Verstappen now, because if he left it,
don't fluff your chance. Don't lock up.
no, true, but he's trying to overtake him from Timbuktu. Shez, cut the chap some slack for Pete's sake.
Why? Well, he's an elite Formula One driver that you're saying is right up at the top there.
No.
Don't lock up.
That chap in front of you, for context, is Max Verstappen in an RB21. Now he can get a tune out of. Context is important. This isn't George Russell just spinning his car around by himself, chap, like Charles Leclerc did.
If he got
Don't do that,
past
chap.
him and then got repassed, I would totally take that argument. But he locked up and went off and didn't even make the move in the first place. So if we're talking about mistakes of consequence, and now we're building this up into something that it isn't, right? But I just don't think you can have it both ways. Charles defended like an absolute beast with no mistakes, placing his car perfectly. George locked up, trying to go past Max. Yes, we can celebrate how brave it was and how ballsy it was. But he didn't do a good job, though.
He didn't do a better job at the US Grand Prix than Charles. I'll agree that with you. No, I'll cede. It's Charles Leclerc's day, Charles Leclerc's weekend. But then you see in the bloody power rankings that he got second, right, and they give Max a perfect stand. But I digress. Mister, I mean, can you spell forcing to be 5-time champion? Shazina, do you think he gets it done in closing, chap? Again, I think I asked you, yeah, do you...
Yeah, but I do think it's in McLaren's hands to arrest it. Like if
in McLaren, in Lando's hands, or
or
McLaren and Oscar's hands.
McLaren's hands, and I say that in terms of either of them, right? They have it within themselves to do this, because we have seen throughout this season that they can pull out really good performances, even against a Max who's fully riled up. Just look at Saudi. Max put it on pole, and Oscar went around the outside of him in turn one. Was it outside or inside? I can't remember. He went around like one side or the other. So it can be done. It's just whether they will or not, or whether or not they're going to capitulate, and Max is going to steamroller them. It'll be the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen, but also the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Controversial opinion. I think if McLaren are going to get it done, then it will be at the altar of favouritism in Lando Norris's favouritism.
Because of momentum.
I think because of the momentum, and because, I mean, I hadn't checked how badly Oscar has performed. Not just the momentum hitherto, season to date, but going into these 5 races where Oscar's never performed well at. It's like, well, double whammy. 64 points is how much Max has taken out of him. 104 points was the gap previously. Now it's only 40, and Max has a car.
But Cameron, again, if Oscar can perform even at tracks where he didn't perform well last season, like he did at the beginning of this season, it's a different story. So again, I'd say it's in his hands to get his head together and do the thing that needs to be done. Close this out. It's not like he hasn't closed out a championship before.
Yeah, but don't do that. I heard them say that on a podcast recently. Let's not do apples and orange.
No, I agree.
Thesis.
I agree. It's not F1.
It ain't no Max though. It's not.
I totally agree. But if you've done it before, you can do it again as long as you can get out of your head. That is what I don't think he'll do it in Mexico. Like genuinely, I don't think they've got the car, and I think Max is too in
Prolific
tune
and
with
metronomic.
yeah around the. You why don't you do the Spanish because I'll mess it up. But but um but with the 2 week gap after Mexico to clear his head, get it together. If he could do it after that, then yeah, game on. But if he can't, I think yeah, it's either going to be Lando or it's going to be Max.
Shez, remind me where they go after Mexico. Is it Brazil and
But
Inter?
is it Brazil? Yeah, it's Brazil, isn't it? Yeah. Well, if it's not raining, then
When has it not rained around Interlagos, chap, in recent years?
2021. I remember that race
And how does
quite
Max?
vividly.
And how does Max fit? I mean, he wasn't bad around there that day. And how has Max? How has Oscar fared around wet tracks recently? Australia. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to.
That's a bit unfair. That's a bit unfaar.
Maybe I don't want to bury it. He'll be all right, Oscar. Do you know what I mean? If he doesn't win this year,
He was quite good in Miami, wasn't he? In the wet.
true, but that's not that's not Interlagos wet. It's not monsoon conditions exactly. But I digress. Shez, you've been a legend as always. I appreciate you, mate, for coming on here, spending the time, taking time out of your family and Tyre GP's time to come in here and go head for head. It's appreciated as
No,
always.
it's a pleasure, man. I love doing this.
You're a legend, chap. You're a legend, chap, and we appreciate you. If you enjoy yourself some Shazinho automotive pugilism, talking about it, then get yourself over to Tyre That GP. That's Tango Yankee. What's Shez? I forgot. Romeo Echo Delta GP with the legend that is Amar, talking about all things F1 centric. You've been a legend, so you guys have been legends. Sir Charles Edward Cheese, Matt Brown, Sir John, I am indebted in perpetuity. Thank you guys. We'll be back same time, same place tomorrow as always. If there is a car on track this weekend, you bet your bottom dollar will be on here streaming it and talking about it. Between now and next time, the prosecution rests. Any further questions, Your Honour?